send this recording to you all. Because I'm traveling, I won't do it because we've got to run out the door right after this is over. I'll do it late tonight. I'll send you an email that has the recording, but you'll have it, and that way if you need to show it to other family members or you want to review it later, you all are going to have it. So thanks, you all. Hey, Con family from Virginia. So let's get down to business. Let me start by saying this. Everyone, mom, dad, kids, everyone listen to the same counsel. It applies to everyone equally. While we're going through this webinar, each of you are going to be tempted to be thinking in your brain while I am talking about skills. You're going to be sitting there going, oh, I sure hope dad's listening to this. And dad's probably thinking, I sure hope my son's listening to this. And mom's thinking, I sure hope my hubby's listening to this. Listen, you're going to be tempted to do that. And I'm going to tell you, don't do that. I want you to sit here and just every time I mention a skill, I want you to ask yourself, is that me? Do I do that? Could I improve in that area? And if you hear me say something that you know one of your other family members are guilty of, do not say a word. You can think whatever you want. Do not say anything out loud, okay? Y'all, it's not polite. It's not polite to make fun of each other, to say, oh, did you hear that, Dad? You're guilty of that. Or, honey, did you hear that? You're guilty of that. It's rude. I mean, none of us like to have our mistakes pointed out. This is a time where we're all going to self-reflect and we're all going to just improve the best that we can. Hey, from the UK, I hope you pronounce your name I'm sorry, I won't say it right, at Nuke. Hey, Naples, Florida. Hey, you all. Hey, Misty. Thank you for being here. So, first of all, let me remind you what etiquette is. If you've listened to me before, you already have this definition memorized. But etiquette is helping those around you to feel valued and comfortable. I literally had someone yesterday, actually say to me, what does etiquette have to do with kindness? And they were actually trying to argue the point that it has nothing to do with kindness. And it's like a stab in my heart. I don't like it. But I do understand where that comes from. In fact, what she went on to say is, she goes, I just think etiquette is a list of stupid, I said it, y'all, forgive me, stupid rules that rich people like to use to show everyone else that they're better than everyone else. And the thing is you know what? Maybe there are people who use etiquette for those reasons. I don't know. But what I know and what I want you to know is that the reason I believe etiquette matters, like our behavior matters, is because our behavior sends unspoken and sometimes spoken messages to people about how we feel about you. Now, you may have heard me use this example before if this isn't your first time listening to me, but let me use table manners as an example. If I came to your home to have dinner with your sweet family and I sat down at your dinner table and I started eating dinner with you, but I started eating using my hands or just eating in a rude way. You know, I was making noises with my tongue. I was chewing with my mouth open. Whatever it was, I was making a weird noise or something, ticking my hands. I would be sending a message to you. That message would be that I don't really care if I'm grossing you out. I don't care if I'm making you uncomfortable. That's your problem. I'm just here to eat and enjoy my meal. And so my behavior, I don't care if it's making you not be able to enjoy your meal. You see, that kind of behavior is very selfish. It means we're only concerned with ourselves and our own enjoyment. But the real reason, hopefully, that we sit down at the table from time to time and eat with our family is not just to fill up our belly, but also to reconnect with our family and the people that we love. To be able to say, Dad, Mom, how was your day? To be able to ask the kids what fun things they've done this week or today or whatever. But we sit down at the table to to reconnect and to fill our bellies at the same time. There's just something so special about eating, dining with the people we love. And so we don't want our behavior to be so distracting that it prevents the other people that we're dining with their ability to enjoy the meal, because it's not fair. And so that's why we focus on table manners. And that's why I'm going to teach you some skills. There's some other reasons we're going to do that, and I will teach you those as we continue to learn. So I want you to know that my love for etiquette first came from reading about George Washington, our first president. So I was reading about him, and I learned that when George Washington was 13 years old, he was told by his teacher at the time that he should brush up on his chivalry skills, which is what you're doing today. And what we know is that George Washington wrote out 110 chivalry skills. And that way, the chivalry skills he was able to learn those. Hold on, I see somebody said, hey, Carrie says she doesn't have a video feed working. Yes, we are recording it. So is anyone else having trouble with the video feed? I'm just hoping it's not a Wi-Fi problem, but we are recording it, you all, and I will be sending it out. So if there is a problem with the live video, I will send it to you. Okay, good. People are saying it's okay, good. All right, just making me nervous. So I think what's so impressive is one time I read, and I can't remember who it was, but I read from someone's journal who had met George Washington in person. And what they said about George Washington is, and this was after he was president, and they said, when I met him and conversed with him, talking to him, he made me feel like I was the most important person in the world and I was a nobody. That's what the person said about themselves. And I thought, wow, here is George Washington, who really, you all, has had accomplished an unbelievable amount of things in his life. Yet when he met people, he had a way of making them feel like his attention and focus was on them, that made them feel like he was so interested in them and so interested in their life. You all, that takes skill. That takes purpose. Etiquette is about being mindful of how our behavior is showing the people we're with how much we care about them. And so that's what this is about. Okay, let's go. So we've already talked about how dining is a time to be with friends and family. And so that's just something I want us to keep in mind as we go through the specific skills. So the first thing I want to talk about is just how to set the table. Now, you all, I know this video is kind of small. I don't know how well you can see that. But what I want to encourage you to do, we really don't have time to go in great detail about a table setting so that I can cover all the other skills. But I'm going to give your family a challenge. I want you to print, if you haven't ordered a place mat from the Etiquette Factory, just print from your computer or have your kids draw it, a proper table setting, and put it up on your refrigerator and make sure you all know it. You might think, okay, Monica, why do we need to know? Why do I need to know that forks go on the left side of the plate? And why do I need to know that glasses always go in the top right corner? Well, I'm going to tell you. So one of the most common mistakes that I have personally experienced when I'm dining with others, especially when I go to like a dinner party or say a luncheon, and you're sitting at a round table and all the place settings are kind of close together, it never fails. Someone will accidentally take my water glass because they were never taught that their water glass plates or all their glasses are always going to be on the right side of their plate. So they reach for mine, they go to their left, and that's my glass. And then there's that embarrassing moment where you're going, do you think I could maybe have that glass over there? Or you have to ask the waitress to get another glass. Or someone will grab my bread plate because they were never taught that their bread plate is always going to be on the left side of the plate. The thing is you don't know where you're going to end up. You might go, well, Monica, we don't even have that much silverware. Y'all, go buy some more. Go buy some plastic silverware, okay? I don't care if it's plastic or real. You need to know, and your kids need to know. And no, maybe you don't eat like this 7 nights a week, but at least one night a week, set your table the way it's supposed to go so that your kids are in the habit of using those utensils correctly. So I had a mom that came up to my booth one time. This was a couple years ago. And she was looking at all my etiquette stuff, and she said, I really failed my children in this regards. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I'll give you an example. She said, my youngest son was a really gifted piano player. And she said he was, recruited to this liberal arts college, and he was a concert pianist, and he was so talented. He is so talented. She said, I think she said his junior year of college, the school administration came to him and said, hey, would you be willing to go with us as a student representative as we go and meet for dinner potential donors to the college? People who might give a lot of money to donate to the college. And they wanted a student from the college to go to kind of share their experiences at the college and how that college had helped them progress with their talent. Well, she said, all of a sudden my son calls me and is like, Mom, what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to eat. You know what I eat like, Mom. And, this boy was fully aware that he did not have the manners, the table manners, or the knowledge to feel comfortable going to fancy restaurants and dining with people, in this manner. She said, so me and him researched some YouTube videos, and we tried to just do a really quick brush up on all of these table manners rules. She said he was so nervous. He was so uncomfortable. He went like 2 times and was miserable because he was so nervous just about the logistics of dining and making sure he didn't embarrass himself. I mean, you all, do you see what I mean? You don't know. You don't know where your kids are going to end up. Kids, you don't know the opportunities that are going to come to you. Don't you want to be prepared so that you can feel comfortable? I mean, what an amazing opportunity for this young man. It should have been this wonderful experience, and instead it wasn't. And so I just feel like it's our job as parents to make sure that our children are socially prepared to be successful. I went to this really fancy dinner not too long ago before COVID, and they were honoring someone, but this man who was, I don't know how to describe it, just was very high up in ranking in this organization. Okay, he was one of the big guns. All right. And he sat at the head of the table that I was at. And so he was a man of honor in this situation, okay? Well, when they brought our main course, I watched this man who, very high up on the food chain, sit there, and we were served a chicken breast. And he took his knife and fork and sat there and cut up his entire chicken breast in about 20 pieces. And so you might be thinking, so what's wrong with that, Miss Irvine? Well, what's wrong with that is that's poor etiquette. You see, you're never supposed to cut more than 1 or 2 bites of anything at a time once you're past the age of 5 years old, because dining is supposed to be a leisure experience, and you're supposed to show that you're not in a hurry. Like if you cut up all your chicken, what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and go, But in America, the American style of dining is we're supposed to cut 1, 2 pieces, set our knife down, switch hands, put our food in our mouth, rest. We place our utensils down between 1 to 2, every 1 to 2 bites, so that we slow down, so that we focus on the other people at the table between our bites, and according to chefs, so that our food doesn't get cold so fast. Because if you cut it up, your food gets cold. And if a chef has put in a lot of, energy into making your meal be perfect, he doesn't want your food to get cold so fast. So it's not about me sitting there judging him like, oh, what a loser. Look, he cut all his chicken up at the same time. Y'all, that's not what I was thinking. What it made me think was, I got to make sure my kids know not to do that, because you just want your kids and yourself to know how to do stuff, to show your best foot forward so that you can be confident that you know what you're doing. So I want you to learn how to set the table so that you'll know how to use your utensils, okay? So promise me you'll do that. All right, next thing we're going to talk about. Oh, y'all, I don't know why it does that. Anytime I do a webinar, you've heard me say this, it kind of messes up my slides. So sorry that the T is below the compliment. But one of the first things we always do, kids, listen, one of the first things we always do when we sit down to eat is we find some way to compliment the cook or the host, even if it's your mom, even if she cooks for you every single night. Kids, it's not easy. It's not easy to go to the grocery. Well, first of all, it's not easy to think about what you're going to cook, and then to go to the grocery and to buy it and bring it home and put it away and then cook and then try to make sure everything's hot at the same time and try to make things that everyone will sort of like. It's not easy. And so even, I don't care if you're 3 years old, 3-year-olds, listen, it's still your job to find a way to say, thank you, Mom, Dad, whoever cooked the dinner. Thank you for cooking for us. And the thing is what if your mom sets down on the table broccoli casserole and you hate broccoli casserole? In fact, you hate smelling it, you hate the sight of it, and I mean, in your opinion, it looks like frog guts. What do? Well, you don't say, Mom, that stinks and it smells like frog guts, because that would be so rude. It would be so rude to insult what your cook has just spent their time and energy preparing. So what we do is we say, thank you. Thanks for cooking for us. And maybe you'll have to hold your breath when you eat that. I don't know. But you're going to be appreciative, because that's what ladies and gentlemen do. We don't complain and we don't point out all the things we don't like. In fact, you'll hear me say it more than once today. Kids, listen. We are to never, ever say the words, I don't like, at the dinner table. Ever. Because it's rude. It just is. Now, if your mom or dad literally says to you, did you like that? Of course, you never are dishonest. Ladies and gentlemen are honest at all times. But you can find a way to be tactful, which means you're sensitive to other people's feelings. So if someone asks you, then yes, they're giving you permission to be honest. But you can say, well, Mom, it wasn't my favorite, but, I appreciate you trying it. And so that's not lying, but that's being tactful. But we don't say, if someone is serving you pizza and you're like, oh, I don't like pizza. You don't say that. You can say, no, thank you, but you don't say, I don't like. Especially when you're at someone else's home. You don't go to a birthday party and you're a guest in someone's home and they're serving hot dogs and you say, I don't like hot dogs. If you don't like hot dogs, say, oh, no, thank you. And that's it. So find a way to compliment the cook. Say, oh, Mom, it smells great, or the table looks beautiful, or just thank you to whoever cooked. All right, next one. You guys are welcome to ask questions along the way. You might be scared to, but you're welcome to. Let's talk about table linens. Now, I don't have all my supplies to show you, but that's okay. Table linens are napkins and tablecloths that are made out of cloth. The etiquette rule is that we're supposed to protect the linen at all times. Now, you might be going, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why are we supposed to use something to keep ourselves clean and we're supposed to protect it? Well, here's the thing, you all. You're not supposed to eat in a way that requires washing, scrubbing, or anything else. If you do, that's probably why your mom and dad have insisted that you be here this morning. You see, when we use a napkin, the word that I want you to remember is dab. D-A-B. Let's all say it together. Ready? Dab. Because you're supposed to eat in a way that only requires a little dab here and a little dab there. Because you're not supposed to eat in a way where you've got food all over your face that requires washing and scrubbing. It's called dab. So if you find that you've got food all over you, well, guess what? You need to start taking smaller bites, and we need to start slowing down, because it's really not hard to keep food from being all over our face if we know how to eat properly. Now, the other rule about napkins. So, right when you sit down at a table, after you compliment the cook, the next thing you do is gently remove your napkin from the table, unfold it until it's in half, and place it in your lap. Now, once you touch your napkin, once your fingers are on it, regardless of how clean you think your hand is, the napkin is now considered dirty. And nothing dirty is ever supposed to touch the table again until everyone is exiting the table. You see, that's why our napkins remain in our lap, and we dab and then back to our lap. And if we must excuse ourselves from the table for any reason during the dinner, we stand up, place our napkin in our chair, leave, come back, place it back in our lap, because nothing dirty is supposed to touch the table. That's where the rule comes from. So the other thing just to keep in mind especially when you're a guest at someone's home, like for instance, I have two tablecloths. I have a tablecloth from my great grandmother's house and one from my mother's house. And I have some linen napkins that were also my grandmother's. And so on special occasions, I bring those out. So whenever you're a guest in someone's home, and they're using real cloth napkins or real cloth tablecloths, that's the other reason I want you to think in your mind, I'm supposed to protect the linen. Because you never know when it's an heirloom, which means something that's been passed down from generation to generation. You never know that what you're using is an heirloom. That's why if you happen to be drinking grape juice and you spill your grape juice, you wouldn't grab the linen napkin to wipe it up unless the host told you to use it. You would go grab a paper towel real quick, something that you could throw away. And so just be careful and mindful. Remember, you all, etiquette is about paying attention and not being oblivious to the things around you, including the items around you. Okay, let's keep going. So this concept of wait. We are literally supposed to wait to take our first bite until everyone has their plate in front of them at the table. Now, mom, dad, listen. I think too often today, parents are feeding the kids and then they eat after. Or parents are giving the kids their plates and then they eat. And it's not really teaching your children how to do this in the correct order. You see, it would be rude of me to just start diving in and enjoying my meal when someone beside me is hungry and waiting to be served. That's where the etiquette comes in, because remember, etiquette is about helping the people around me to feel valued. Well, if I'm just sitting there enjoying my meal and they haven't even been served theirs, it sends a message that I don't really care that they're hungry. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy my meal first, because too bad, too sad, I got my plate already. Those are the messages we don't want to send. Now, I've been to restaurants just like you have when there's a bunch of us, like 8 or 10 or 12 of us, and it's seldom that all of our food comes out at the same time. So here's what you can do. If you're with a large group and half the table has been served and the other half hasn't been yet, those who have not been served, someone from that group can look to the group who has their plate in front of them, and they can say, "You all don't wait. Please go ahead and start enjoying your food." Because there is a chance that people waiting, their food will get cold. Well, yeah, and that's too bad. If your food gets cold, it gets cold. But if you're invited to go ahead and start enjoying your meal, then you can decide whether you're going to go ahead and do that or not. But you're really supposed to be invited to do that before you do it. And that's why, Mom and Dad, it's really important that we make sure the table is sat, all the food is ready. Mom, you've got yourself together so that you can sit down with your family and eat as a family, looking into each other's eyes, talking to each other all together. And there's another skill we're getting ready to talk about that will show you how important that is as well. Okay, another thing to keep in mind, especially when you're a guest in someone else's home, is that we honor other people's traditions, especially inside their home. So we might not all do things the exact same way, you all, and that's okay. That's what makes America great. That's what makes our world great. And so everyone has different traditions. And so it would be poor etiquette for me to go to another country and expect them to eat like us Americans do, because they have their own traditions and their own culture. What would be polite for me to do is, before I go into someone's home who has another culture, is to find out about, I would Google, what is the dining etiquette for Afghanistan? What is the dining etiquette for Korea? And I would brush up. Maybe I didn't have to know everything, but I would try to at least get a general sense of what I needed to know so that I could honor the people's homes who I was visiting. And just like, if maybe your family is Christian and you never take a bite of food without blessing it. Well, that's beautiful. But what if you go to your friend's house and they sit down and start eating and no one says a blessing? It would be really rude and insensitive and actually disrespectful to be in someone else's home and say, "Don't you people pray?" We wouldn't do that. Now, you could say your own silent prayer and bless your food yourself, but that is up to you. But it's just really important that we show respect in whose ever home we're in, because that's how we show people we love and care about them, when we show them that we honor them. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this. So, kids, families, you may have already heard me teach this skill. That's okay. It's good to hear things twice. So, if we were at an event and a troop brought in the American flag and we were all seated, what would we do? You're right. We would stand up. And it's this act of going from a seated position to a standing position that shows, is just this little way that we show how we feel about that flag and what it means to us. And that's why we stand up. And it's a personal decision when you stand up and show respect for that flag. Well, the same idea is in manner. So let me give you the etiquette rule for standing. It is polite for children to stand for adults, and it is polite for gentlemen to stand for ladies. Now, you all wait. Don't hear me out here before you get upset about that. You know, I know what happens when someone is kind enough to stand for me and let me take my seat before them. It's such a feeling of love. If you want to increase the love between you and your spouse, between your children for their mother and for each other, you all try this. You know, it's seldom that our children really get to show their appreciation for what their mother and other adults do in their life. Sometimes you got a kid that is just really aware and says thank you a lot. But other times we have to kind of help, encourage those acts of gratitude. And so it's just this small, tiny way that our children can show appreciation for whomever has cooked the meal and for all that adults do for them in their life. So here's what it would look like in your family. If mom said, okay, family, time for dinner, the family would come to the table and everyone would remain standing until mom has sat down, or the cook or the host. And once the host or the cook has taken their seat, then all of the ladies at the table sit down. That means that your 5-year-old son is standing for his 14-year-old sister. Now, sometimes I'll get women that say, Monica, I'm not going to ask my kids to stand for me. I don't think that's necessary. It's not really for them, you all. I mean, it's not really for you. It's for them. If you want your children to be honorable, they have to do honorable things. But our society keeps stripping away opportunities for children to do honorable things. And then us adults want to go around complaining about this entitled generation. Well, entitlement is a learned behavior. That's what happens when we continue to put our kids first. How many of you allow your children to fix their plates before their grandmother, before their aunts at your family gatherings? You all, I believe it's wrong. And I believe it's doing a disservice to your children. I believe things like that teach entitlement. I can't imagine fixing my plate before my grandmother. She's usually the one that has just spent 2 weeks preparing for Thanksgiving dinner. And then for me to ever think that I'm going to serve myself before that precious woman, never. And I would never want my children to assume that they're going to serve themselves before their elders. It's so sad to me that our society has gotten rid of these types of kind gestures. You all, I believe it's hurting our children. It's limiting their ability to feel honorable, to have self-worth. Self-worth and dignity comes from sacrificing yourself for others. But our society keeps taking away opportunities for our children to sacrifice themselves for others. Did I ever care that my son was the last one at our family gatherings, the last one in line? No, never. Because I knew it was good for him and it was helping him to be and live a more honorable life. Parents, we need to be more purposeful. One time I was talking about this with my grandmother, and she said, Monica, when I was a kid, the children literally had to stay outside on the porch until all the adults had eaten. And then after the adults had finished eating, of course, sometimes it was because of a small house, right? But still, the adults ate, and then the kids could come in and fix their plates. And no, I don't think we should make our kids stand outside. But you all, do you understand the principle? We've got to change how we're doing things. It actually does matter because it ingrains in our children a heart for serving. And no, maybe they're not going to be thrilled that they're at the end of the line at first, but I promise you that they will start to feel good about themselves, especially when other people start going, "Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, you're so kind. You're so polite." And I'm not saying that that's why we do it to get praise, but that's going to be what happens. So Missy says, at what age do the kids begin to go after the adults? I mean, Missy, 5. And let's say you and your family go to a church potluck and you want to eat with your family. There's nothing wrong with that. It just, your family goes up together and then sits down together. But what I see at too many churches is right after the minister says amen, the kids and teenagers rush to the table, and then you've got elderly people standing in a line. And that's what we have got to recognize is just wrong. At our church, after we discussed this, we had a new policy that you could eat with your family, but if you didn't need to have that done, we let teenagers help the kids fix their plates. And the kids loved it. The teenagers actually liked the responsibility, and the little kids loved that teenagers were helping them fix their plates. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about serving and buttering bread. So basically, just what we need to know here is that whenever a couple of things, no one wants your hands on their food. So whenever like a basket of bread is sent around the table, we just want to make sure that we do our best to make sure our fingers, if possible, only touch our bread. So we don't dig through the bread basket looking for the biggest piece or the one with the most sesame seeds. We just take the one on top and put it on our bread plate. Now, here comes the butter dish. So here's the etiquette rule about buttering our bread. The idea is that you want to pass the butter dish and bread as quickly as possible. Once again, so people don't have to wait for it. And so what we do is we take our butter knife or the butter knife, we get a sliver of butter out of the butter dish and place it on the edge of our bread plate. And then we continue to pass the butter dish. And then we butter our bread directly from our pat of butter on our butter plate or bread plate. The reason we do that is number one, so people don't sit there and have to wait for us to sit there and lather up our roll. The other thing is when we start to butter our bread, we tend to get a few of the breadcrumbs on the butter knife. So it's also trying to not get a bunch of crumbs in the butter dish. And it's just to try to make it go a little bit more smoothly. Now, let's talk about breaking bread. So the rule with breaking bread is when you're served a roll or a slice of bread, you look at it and you ask yourself, could I place this whole piece in my mouth, like take a bite of it, without getting bread and butter all over my cheeks? If I can't do that, then I need to break the bread into a smaller, more manageable piece. And then I butter that piece and then eat it. And then I butter the other piece. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, never look over anxious to eat. The eating part is not supposed to be the most exciting part of our meal. I know it might be, and sometimes for me it is. But we want to portray that really what we're most interested in is reconnecting with the people that we're dining with. So we never go too fast, and we try to be modest in our behavior when we're doing things like buttering bread. And we also want to make sure and keep in mind how many people need to butter their bread at the table, how much butter did they give us, so that we're mindful of how much we're taking. Okay, let's go on to the next one. As far as utensils, you all, one thing that you can know. So the way it works, and once you learn how to set your table, remember your homework assignment, is whatever utensil you use first is going to be the furthest away from your plate. So, for instance, if you were coming to my house for dinner and I was going to serve you soup, a soup course, a salad course, a main course, and a dessert. Well, I would make sure, and maybe the dessert was going to be ice cream. And so, or maybe, let's see, maybe I was going to serve you, let me give you a better example. Maybe I was going to serve you a bowl of soup, but also I was going to serve you some, I can't think in my mind right now, some food item that I thought you wouldn't, oh, I was going to serve you spaghetti. And so I was going to serve, the proper way to eat spaghetti is with a spoon also, okay? So you sat down and the first course I gave you was a bowl of soup, but there you look and on the right side of your plate are 2 spoons. Well, how do you know which spoon to grab? Well, you're going to grab the spoon that is furthest from the plate. And I promise you that's going to be your soup spoon, because if I'm the one that set the table, I'm going to set your soup spoon the farthest away from your table on your plate, because I know that that's the course I'm serving you first. Once you learn that you just kind of work your way in, like if you sat down at a table and there were 5 forks, and you might just freak out because, how am I going to know which fork to use? Well, when they serve you something that requires a fork, you're going to grab the fork farthest away from your plate. And then they're going to take that away. And then they're going to bring you something else that you need a fork to eat. You're going to grab the one next. And so you just kind of work your way in. And then you'll know that you're always using the right utensil. So that's kind of exciting. So those are things that we can talk about a little bit more in detail in our etiquette programs. Okay, all I'm going to allow you, or you're going to be able to do right now, is just take a look at this picture. So the picture, the larger picture, is the proper way to hold your utensils when cutting food. So in America, we have what's called the American style of dining. And so let's say this was my fork. And so what we do is we kind of wrap our fingers around. We wrap our fingers around our utensils when we're cutting. And our pointer fingers, as you see in that picture, are what we use to put a little pressure with our knife or with our fork. And we watch our elbows because we don't want to, knock someone out when we're cutting. So we try to keep our elbows down and we cut. And the biggest thing to remember is to always rest between bites. Now, you all, on the Etiquette Factory Facebook page, on the Fundamentals Facebook page, we've got a video that shows you the proper way to cut. I'll try to find that link and I'll include that in the email I send you later so that you all can really watch how we cut and how we switch hands. I don't really want to get into that right now because my camera just isn't going to let me show you properly, but I will include that in the email I send you all later. Parents, one thing I'll tell you is please practice with your kids. So when kids come to me, when they come to Manners Camp, I teach them how to cut by using sandwich bread. And we just sit there and practice until they get really good at cutting sandwich bread. And then I'll move them up to fruit. I'll usually let them practice on some fresh pineapple because it's a little slippery. And then they're going to finally graduate to cutting with chicken or meat. What if you're left-handed? Well, if you're left-handed, so in America, the American style of dining, you hold your knife with your dominant hand. And you eat with your dominant hand. And so your dominant hand is where your knife goes. But once you've cut the piece off, you place your knife on the edge of the plate. And then you switch your fork into your dominant hand because our dominant hand holds our fork. I guess one thing to remember is that just like the napkin, you all, once you touch your utensils, they're considered dirty or used. And that's why your utensils never touch the table again. So in between cutting and resting, You're resting your utensils on your plate. They're never supposed to go back to the table. So I will include that more descriptive video to help your kids see exactly what it looks like. Now, this is a picture of some bad etiquette eating soup. Really, her biggest mistake here is what? What do you think? It's her posture. She's doing this. She's leaning over. So I hear parents say to kids all the time, lean over, lean over. And actually, parents, that's a terrible habit to get your kids into because our posture is supposed to be straight. We're supposed to have straight backs. The thing is we want to teach our kids how to put a bite on our fork or spoon and take the journey from the plate all the way up to our mouth without it falling off. Well, the way we do that is we take smaller bites and we're careful, but we want to keep our posture up. And our elbows, her elbows on the table in America, that is a no-no. Once again, it's kind of hard. If you're an adult, it's really impossible to have good posture and have your elbow on the table. So the reason elbows are not supposed to be on the table is number one, it causes more, it increases the chances of spills. Because if your body parts are on the table, there's a chance you're going to get your sleeve in some food, you're going to knock over a drink, and it's just not attractive when you're slouching. It just doesn't look very good. So let's do a little example. I'll do the best I can with what I have here. Let's imagine this is my soup. Now it's down here, but to get it in the camera, I'm going to hold it up here. But it's sitting on a table, right? So the rule about eating soup or oatmeal or your cereal, typically people do this. We kind of do this thing where it kind of looks like we're shoveling food into our mouth. And that's why the proper etiquette is that first you take your spoon away from you and then you bring it to your mouth. And you may be thinking, well, that makes no sense. That's just an extra step. But the reason we first take our spoon away from us is because we're supposed to clean the bottom of the spoon off on the edge of our bowl in case it's dripping from the bottom of our spoon. And then we can feel more safe that it's not going to drip as we take it to our mouth. So it's kind of an out and then in when we're eating our soup and we're sitting with good posture. Practice. It feels really weird at first, but it is the proper way to eat things in a bowl. Now this is a picture of the resting position. So the picture, I think it's going to be on your left, but the picture where you see the knife and the fork is separated. So you all, that's a message that I'm still eating. I'm just resting. My fork and knife are separated. My knife is up there on the edge and the blade is facing in. This means leave me alone. I'm still eating. Whereas when I put my knife and fork side by side at about 4 o'clock. So look at that plate and imagine, kids, that it's a clock. There at the top of the plate is going to be 12 o'clock. There at the bottom of the plate is 6 o'clock. So when I put my two handles around 4 or 5 o'clock side by side, that is me sending a message to the waitress that I'm finished and yes, you may take my plate. Now, it comes from the etiquette that back in the olden days when you were being served, it was rude for a server to speak unnecessarily to the people eating. The idea is that if I'm at a restaurant with my spouse, I'm there to talk to my spouse, to not really be in this big conversation with the waitress. Now, you all, today it's not quite like that, but in reality, it still is something that the guests are supposed to decide how much they communicate with those that are serving them. Now, although I might teach you that this is the message that yes, I'm finished and yes, you can take my plate. Obviously today, because no one teaches etiquette anymore, most of your waitresses and servers don't know this rule. But also where this rule comes from is it's kind of rude to come up to someone and say, Are you still eating? Are you still working on that? I get waitresses that say that to me all the time. Are you still working on that? And that's just not a polite way to discuss someone dining. Working on food kind of is just not a pretty picture. And so we're supposed to send that message by where we put our utensils. But here's the bottom line. I'm going to teach you the rule. You're going to know what to do. It doesn't matter if no one else knows about it. In y'all's home, practice it. Yes. So Aaron said, I was taught to flip the fork over and lay my utensils the same way as you in the right picture. So yes, Aaron, that's also acceptable. And in fact, if you're eating just a salad, so you don't have a knife and a salad to put side by side, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. You just turn the fork upside down and still have it at about 4 or 5 o'clock. So that is the same principle. And as far as the soup, like what do you do with the soup spoon? Well, you're really never supposed to be served a bowl of soup unless it's sitting on a soup plate, which is the purpose. Because what happens is while you're eating your soup or your oatmeal and you're resting between bites, your spoon is obviously still in the soup. But when you're finished and ready for your soup to be taken away, hopefully you've got a plate under your soup bowl so you can take your spoon out and lay it on the edge of your plate. And that's supposed to send the message that, yes, I'm finished and you can take it away. Oh, y'all, goodness, I'm going slow. I got to speed it up a little bit. Okay, this is an old picture. I'm being mean to poor Barack Obama. But the only thing he's doing here, what I was showing, is actually he does have a posture problem here, so he's leaning over and he shouldn't be doing that. But he's actually eating with the continental style, and which it's not rude to eat the continental style in America. It's just that it's more acceptable to have the American style. But families, that could be another fun homework assignment, is to go find out what a continental style of dining is. Because if you travel to other countries, go to Europe and other places, that's what you're going to see more of. And I think it would be really great for your kids to understand the difference. Okay, Kim said, the server should present the meal from the left and take it from the right. And that is why we place our utensils in the finishing position on the right. I love that. Thank you for pointing that out, Kim. So that's true. I think one of the issues is that so often today in restaurants, there's a lot of booths. And even at people's homes, sometimes it's just not possible to do that left and right service just because of the table situation. But that is also very true. Yes, everyone is on mute, you all. So don't worry. Thank you, Kim. Okay, we've talked enough about posture. Let's move on. Okay, so what do we do when we find ourselves with something in our mouth that is not supposed to be there? Now, I'm not talking about kids when you just don't like something. But what if you take a bite of mashed potatoes and all of a sudden you realize you've got a hair in your mouth? I know, it's disgusting. But what do? Remembering that you're a lady and a gentleman. Well, you've got two options. So here's the etiquette rule. It is impolite to ever conduct hygiene in public. Now, maybe it's one of those things, families, that how you behave at home is more than likely how you're going to behave in public. So be very careful with allowing your kids to do stuff at home, but say, no, don't you do that in public, though, because chances are that's not going to work. So this means that we don't clean our teeth. We just don't do hygiene items like comb our hair, clip our fingernails in public. But that also means removing food from our mouth. But you've got two options. So sometimes you're kind of stuck, like you have a hair in your mouth, you're sitting at a booth in a restaurant, and you're at the inside of the booth with two other people beside you, and it's just not the easiest thing to get out and go handle it in private in the bathroom, which is what would really be ideal. But the other etiquette rule is that you are discreet. Discreet means that you do something without drawing attention to yourself, almost like you try to do it secretly. And so if I can discreetly do this, I will. I'll remove it from my mouth with my pointer finger and my thumb and quietly and discreetly place it on the edge of my plate. Here's what we don't do. We don't announce gross things at the table. We don't go, oh, you all, look what I just found in the mashed potatoes. That is disgusting. Because now you've just ruined everyone else's appetite at the dinner table. Now, you all, if it's a safety issue, like you just bit into a piece of glass in the salad, well then yes, that's something you would need to announce. But y'all, even though you're grossed out, you're not going to die from a hair. You won't. And neither will anyone else. So we don't draw attention to gross things. And especially if you're visiting someone else's house and you're a guest, you would never do something that would humiliate the host. So you're just going to be discreet about it. What you don't do also is you don't spit things in a napkin. Ever. You just don't do it. We don't spit things out at the table. Kids, you don't spit things out at the table. You just deal with it. You either discreetly remove it or you excuse yourself to the restroom and handle it in private. You don't come back to the table and give everyone details of what happened in the bathroom because we don't want to know about it. Okay? So let's move on. Okay, buffet lines. What I just want to tell you is just, I think the biggest thing with buffet lines, you all, is that just remember etiquette is about paying attention. Okay, let's say that you go to a buffet at your grandmother's house and it's a big family get together or a church potluck. And you don't like that, you don't like that, you don't like that. But whoa, right there with the light from heaven shining on it is some shell macaroni and cheese. And you're like, well, since I don't like all those things, I'm just going to get 5 helpings of macaroni and cheese. That's not how it works. You see, we only get a single helping of each item because there may not be enough for everyone to have some if you take more than your share. It's very, once again, rude and selfish for you to think that you get more than a single helping. Now, another thing to remember, everyone, when you're a guest in someone else's home, is that it's not polite to ask for seconds. You have to wait and be invited to have seconds. So if you're a guest, you don't go, oh, could I have some more? But you have to wait for me to say, oh, you all, please help yourself to more. There's plenty for you to have seconds. It's just one of those rules because here's what has happened. Like you might be at my house and someone's like, oh, Monica, those rolls were just divine. Could I have another one? Well, what if I only have 2 more, but I've got 6 people at the table? Then, of course, that was poor planning on my part, but nevertheless, that's why you don't ask, because then you might put the host in an awkward position that she doesn't have enough to give everyone seconds. I see that we're a minute away, so I'm going to try to speed up these last couple ones. Okay, the rule about heaping plates is that your plate should never look like a mountain. Y'all, okay, maybe on Thanksgiving, that's the only day of the year that your plate can look like a mountain. Any other time, it needs to be flat. So you don't overindulge because it's just not attractive, once again. Now, you know how a lot of times plates have a little decorative rim around them, like maybe there's some flowers around the edges. So your food is really supposed to stay on the inside of the plate and not be just all the way to the edges like this plate you see in the picture, kind of spilling out place. Because that's how we have a mess on the table after we've eaten. When we've just filled our plate too full and we've just been too messy. Because really, the whole time we're eating, there should not be any food under your plate or around your plate when you're done. If there is, then you're eating in a way that is not becoming of a lady and a gentleman. So we need to work on that. Okay, forks and fingers. The rule here is that there are foods like buffalo wings or pizza or corn on the cob that we're going to eat with our hands and fingers, and that's okay. What I might just kind of tell you to keep in mind, if I was going out to dinner with people that I didn't know very well, like maybe, or my boss, or maybe just some church friends who I knew, but they weren't my best friends, I probably wouldn't order chicken wings. I wouldn't order something that I knew was going to be very difficult for me to eat with confidence and not be so messy. Those are just items that I probably would say for when I was eating with people that I was really comfortable with. And so just keep that in mind. Keep in mind, definitely I've been at dinners where they'll bring me a menu and I think about, no, that would be too messy for who I'm with. And so just keep that in mind when you're ordering. Okay, we just have a couple more, y'all. We're almost done. As far as an accident at the table, the rule here is, kids and everyone, when you spill something, you don't just sit back and go, oh, hey, Mom, just spilled the grape juice. Yeah, it's running down the table. Looks like a river. Looks like hot lava moving across the table, Mom. You better go fast. Come fast. Yeah, no. When we spill, we get up quickly and you handle it. You clean it up. You grab some paper towels. You don't wait for someone else to help you. Kids, you got this. When you're 5 years old, you clean it up. You're responsible. And then you might have to say, hey, Mom, what do you want me to use to wipe it up with? So that might be something to say. Remember, we don't use linen to clean up spills that are too messy. But just apologize. One thing about making a mistake at the table is if you have made a spill, y'all, we've all done it. We have all knocked over a glass more than once. We've all done it. So we're going to apologize. Say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I spilt that. You're going to clean it up, and then that's the end of it. You're not going to keep apologizing. You're not going to keep bringing it up, because a lady and a gentleman don't focus and draw attention on things that are not pleasant. So we move on from the bad situations and we start talking about something that's pleasant. And we don't dwell on mistakes because we've all made them, and we just move on. Okay, taking the last bite. I guess it would be rude for any of us to assume that it's okay to take the last bite or the last piece, especially when other people are present. Like if there's one last piece of chocolate cake staring at all of us and we're all sitting there and we really want it, of course, what we should say is, okay, would anyone like to share this with me? Because I really would love a little bit more of that pie. Especially when you're in your home. Once again, if you're a guest, you have to be offered, but just never assume, and always try to share those last pieces of things that are really yummy. All right, let's see what else. We've already kind of talked about that. You all, it's never polite to put your fingers in your mouth at the dinner table. We don't, after you're eating popcorn, you don't sit there and lick all your fingers when you're in public. I realize that's one thing we actually may do in the privacy of our home, but you never lick things when you're around other people. At least we try not to do that, y'all, because it's gross. It's kind of gross, especially to hear someone licking. That is something that we don't do. Conversation, we try to keep conversation pleasant and uplifting at the table. We don't make weird noises. Usually most of the noise comes from how we eat. Remember something. So in America, and really this is kind of a standard across all countries, is we're supposed to close our lips on the food that we're eating. What makes people eat really loudly is when they just kind of crunch with their teeth. When they take a bite of a potato chip with their teeth and not with their lips also closing on it. It can make such a huge difference in the level of noise that you're making. And so we just try to really reduce the noise that is coming from us when we're eating. Y'all, none of us like to hear excessive noise from others when they're eating. I don't know why it's so bothersome, but we are all a little sensitive to it. So once again, etiquette is just about being sensitive to the noises and the behaviors that we're making that might be distracting to the people around us. All right, last thing I'm going to tell you, last rule, and kids, you'll be off the hook, is that it's rude to constantly be correcting, especially at the table. Parents, what I would suggest so that the table is not a negative experience for everyone is, the whole point of the Etiquette Factory is to teach these skills in a positive way. Make them part of your school day. Like, I just went so quickly through a lot of etiquette, dining etiquette. You all could now take this video that I'm going to send you and just work on one skill every week. Really focus on setting the table properly next week. The next week, really focus on how to cut your food properly, and just take it a skill at a time. But what I've learned is that if parents sit there and throughout the whole meal chew with your mouth closed, could you stop making that noise? Could you sit up straight? Could you It just becomes such a negative thing. I had a woman walk up to my booth one time. She looked up and saw my sign, the Etiquette Factory, and she said, "Oh, whenever I see the word etiquette or manners, I just kind of get this sick feeling in my stomach." And I'm like, "I bet you had a bad experience with someone correcting you." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "My grandmother, we would sit there at the dinner table and she goes, I just was always scared to sit. If you sat too close to my grandmother, she goes, you were going to get at least one flick in the head." She goes, "You just would be sitting there and all of a sudden she'd flick you in the head and say, 'Stop doing that,' or 'Sit up straighter,' or 'Chew with your mouth closed.'" And I said, the thing is, your grandmother was breaking a larger etiquette rule than you could have ever been breaking in the way you were eating. Because it is so rude to publicly or privately humiliate someone. It's embarrassing to be corrected in front of others. And I have never supported that kind of teaching. I don't think it works well, you all. I think it ends up making our kids resent us and resent manners. Because I have a lot of people that tell me they resent manners. And it's because of the way it was handled in their home. I had another woman that walk up and say, when I had just gotten married and I'd go to my mother-in-law's house, and my mother-in-law asked if I would set the table for the family. And she said, I was a little nervous because, we didn't have all the kind of fancy table settings that my mother-in-law had. So I set the table the best I could. And then when everyone came into the dining room, my mother-in-law said, "Oh, somebody's mother didn't teach them how to set the table correctly." And that just hurt my heart because I said, "Oh, your mother-in-law could not have been more rude." Once again, she broke the heart of etiquette rule, because you never say or do anything that humiliates someone. That's more rude than putting your fork wherever you want to put it. I would much rather you be kind than me worried about what fork you're eating your salad with. I want to teach you those things, you all, once again, so you know what to do, so you don't have to be embarrassed or wonder about how. But what I really want is for your heart to care about how you make other people feel. That's what etiquette is. And that's what all of this is about. Really, that's all it's about. So you all, let's see, question, what about your teeth on your fork? You're not supposed to use your teeth on your fork. Really, because it makes that horrible noise like fingernails going down a chalkboard. And that's why we remove food from our fork with our lips. All right, you all, that's all I'm going to teach you. You've got to go. I've got to go. It's 10 after 1. I want to tell you one last thing. You all, Rise Up is closing tomorrow. You've only got through tomorrow to join Rise Up. Here, I'm gonna type it in here right now. So it's theetiquettefactory.com/rise up. This might go check it out. You all, I want you to join us. I want you to join us if you feel like you need some parental support. If you feel like you would enjoy having a community around raising our children. So go to that link. It's only open through tomorrow. It will not be open again until 2021. And I would love for you to join us. Y'all, thank you. I hope you learned a lot. Sorry it was so fast. I'm going to send you the recording so you can slow it down. Have a great Saturday. Kids, thank you for listening. Practice your manners and love manners. They're not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's things that will help you have happier relationships. Thanks, you all. Thank you. Have the best weekend. Love you all. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate it. Bye. Sorry, I've got to run, but I've got to run. Bye, y'all.